So women are more likely to experience depression. They're more likely to experience treatment-resistant depression, recurring depression, and to have different symptomology. So the question is, like, why is that, right? And then in looking at gene expression changes from postmortem human tissue, we're just asking the question, for people who had depression compared to people who did not have a diagnosis during their lifetime, which genes were turned on and off, right?
Welcome to the Do You Feel Heard podcast, a production of Helping the Herd. Helping the Herd is committed to empowering individuals to liberate themselves from the patterns that keep them from creating their ideal life. If you like this podcast, visit helpingtheherd.com to find resources and personalized coaching to empower you to be your best self.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Do You Feel Heard podcast. Great to see you guys today. And thanks for being here as always. Micah, thank you for joining us. How are you guys doing today?
Can't complain. It's warm out here. I'm a little sweaty, a little sheeny, but that's how these things go.
Yeah, we got thunderstorms over here, but grateful for the water. The plants are loving it. Everything is very green.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Gratitude.
How are you, Derek?
Always good to bring in the gratitude. Oh, thanks for asking. Grateful for you asking. I'm grateful. I'm excited. Going to a meditation retreat tomorrow. So busy preparing, but really excited and grateful. I'm going to be meeting David Nickturn, one of my meditation teachers. No, I've actually met him before, but I'll be seeing him in person when I've done a lot of audio books and podcasts and over Zoom whenever I taught with him to be a meditation teacher, whenever I was with him for that. And then meeting for the first time Duncan Trussell, who's a big idol.
I was just about to ask, how excited. Very jealous. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, Duncan's done a lot of good for my life. I've learned a lot. I've met a lot of cool people through that, his podcast and just Aura. And just really excited for a big step on the meditative path here. Yeah, thanks for asking. All right, well, I want to dive into our guest here, though. Micah, I don't even know where to start with Micah, a man who needs no introduction, but is also hard to introduce. A man who does a lot of things, and I met him through some very close mutual friends, and was very thankful in moving out to Pittsburgh to have him right down the road from me. We do everything from sports to long conversations on many different topics. But I'll let him introduce himself to see which aspects of that many-faceted personality he wants to share with us today.
Absolutely. Well, first off, thank you for both inviting me here. Grateful to be here. Man, you're right. In terms of introducing myself, there's like so many different competing threads and strands where I could go with this. I guess I'll go with just like the usual narrative. I am from Baltimore native, so that means a Ravens fan, living in dangerous country here in Pittsburgh. I've been here working for the university since 2011, so I've been here for quite a while, doing basic research for the university. But I think that my identity is more than just as a researcher, like, in neuroscience or in psychiatry. And in a lot of ways, I'm just figuring it out, just a student.
Always a student, right? Yeah. What education path did you take to get there? What was that like?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, it was kind of twisty. So I was initially a pre-med major in college, but more because my father wanted me to be a pre-med major. I think you know how that goes. And towards the end of college, I made the decision that I was going to go to graduate school because I had a conversation with my friend Travis. And he told me, he was like, yeah, man, they don't pay you that much, but, you get paid to go to graduate school for chemistry. And I said, oh, you get paid? Because medical school was going to be so expensive. So I decided to make the switch. And initially, I came to Pittsburgh to do a post-baccalaureate program, just a one-year research program looking at infectious disease because I was really influenced by this book, Mountains Beyond Mountains. And it was about a physician who had managed to change, Haiti, managed to change how the World Health Organization looked at transmittable diseases. And I said, that's the way to change the world, infectious disease. So I came here to the university, studied infectious disease for a year, and kind of realized that bacteria is pretty boring. It doesn't move. It doesn't, you know what I mean? So I found myself during that year spending some time when I had a chance reading about the brain, reading about neuroscience, reading about that kind of research, and went to graduate school for neuroscience, and then got in there, and the day-to-day of the neuroscience research was cool, but it didn't give me the satisfaction that I was looking for. Like, I came in pretty hot and heavy, studying schizophrenia, and feeling like, man, give me a year and I'm going to figure this out. I don't know what we've been doing in the past, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out where research needs to go and how we can help change the world in terms of psychiatry. And I just ran into this idea again and again in graduate school that while I was doing so much to know about one area of, the brain, one area in terms of the circuitry, the cellular aspect of things, when people at home would ask me, like, oh, yeah, so, for this family member who's going through a tough time, like, what do we do? And it's like, oh, well, I'm not the person that you would talk to about that. I could tell you about, subtle changes in gene expression in this subset of patients that we looked at, but I cannot tell you how to help, our cousin or our uncle. And so kind of ran into a crisis in terms of trying to answer the question, like, am I redeeming the time? Is my effort here really going towards helping people? And, yeah, for sure, I'm good. My career is set, my bills are paid. But I kept on asking the question, like, am I really, truly helping? Am I really doing what I set out to do? And kind of came to the answer, not really, you know what I mean? So I mastered out. I got my master's and have been working at the university since then. Because there's kind of two tracks with research specifically. And if you go the academia route, tenure track, it's a lifestyle. It's not just a position. It's not just you go to work and you leave it when you come home. It's in a lot of ways the thing that guides you for the long haul. And I decided I was going to figure out other things. So that is the general twisting and turning path that has led me to where I am now,
That's very cool. Thank you for sharing about that path. I love that it wasn't a straightforward thing. There's most people that I encounter, it's not been like, well, I went here and this logical step and then this logical step. It's like, no, life happens and new realizations come in, new questions are asked that I can't answer, and that leads me to wanting to answer that question. I love that that was your path. What are you doing now at the university?
So I am still doing basic research in the Department of Psychiatry, but whereas during my graduate work I was studying schizophrenia, since then I worked for a lab that looked at opioid use disorder in an animal model. And then currently we look at depression using postmortem human tissue, which is a fancy word for tissue that came from people who donated their brains to science. And looking specifically at how gene expression differences are different between men and women who had depression during their lifetime.
Very cool. What have you been seeing? What can you tell us from the depths of dead brain?
Absolutely. Make that brain tissue alive. So the general story is that while everybody across the globe experiences depression, the phenomenology, the symptomology, the severity differs between men and women, and that seems to be a pretty common finding across the globe. So it's not just about our culture. It's not just about our culture not being set up in a way that that operates differently with men and women. It does seem to be a thing that is just different between the sexes, right? So women are more likely to experience depression. They're more likely to experience treatment-resistant depression, recurring depression, and to have different symptomology. So the question is, why is that, right? And then in looking at gene expression changes from postmortem human tissue, we're just asking the question, for people who had depression compared to people who did not have a diagnosis during their lifetime, which genes were turned on and off, right? And what is the primary driving idea behind a lot of our research is that when you look at men and women who had depression during their lifetime, the gene expression changes are unique between the sexes, and when they are common, they're moving in different directions. So it seems as if while you have a common disease state, you have opposing mechanisms that get you there. Yeah. Why that is a big question, one that we don't really know, but we do know that immune changes. So the immune system is involved in that process. And then this is kind of outside of my research, but it is a thing that is kind of connected, and something that I found interesting is that men and women have differences in their immune function. So just at baseline, women have across the board stronger immune systems. They recover from infections. They are more likely to recover from colds than men. And that's a common finding across the globe as well. So in a lot of ways, what that tells us is that having a primed immune system at baseline does protect you against infections and disease, but it can maybe set you up to have the other side of things. So if you think of depression, and this isn't necessarily the truth, but if you think of depression as in some ways an autoimmune disorder, well, women across the board are more likely to experience autoimmune disorders as well. So that's everything from arthritis to chronic fatigue syndrome, multiple sclerosis. The list is kind of stark for things like Hashimoto's, for example. Like the incidence rate is 12-1 between women and men. So there's a lot of interesting trails that connect those ideas together, and in general, that's what we're trying to unpack in our research.
I don't want to hog all of the questions, Derek, but I have so many.
You're going deep. I didn't think we'd be going into the nitty-gritty of the research.
Oh, let's get nitty. Let's get gritty.
As far as you mentioned, if we looked at depression the same way we would look at an autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
If we were to do that, we would first need to zoom out a little bit and look at autoimmune diseases, right?
For sure.
If we're going to compare the two. Would the research that you have seen, or the theories or hypotheses that have been shown to you, that you have digested and reviewed, is autoimmune something that you are strictly born with, or is that something that you pick up in your environment? Is that hereditary? Is that something like you were just, it was a bad luck of drew the short straw and you just got it, sorry about it? Or is it something that can develop that maybe it wouldn't have developed if you were in a different circumstance?
That is a good question. That's an excellent question. And I'll preface my answer by saying that I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Okay.
So, okay, I'll start off with, I think that there are data to say that it is in some ways genetically predisposed. So one thing is there's genetic sex. There's, men have an X and a Y, and women have two X's, right? Generally. There are definitely examples where that's not true. There are exceptions to those rules. But generally, women have two X's, men have one X, one Y. Well, the X chromosome has more immune-related genes than any of the other chromosomes. So there is just a genetic basis right there for having a more primed immune system at baseline. In terms of whether it's the bad luck of the draw, I think there is some relationship between environment and genes. I think given the same genetic milieu, the same genes, you can have things happen in your life that lead to one thing versus another. So outside of the realm of autoimmune disorders, and talking specifically about psychiatry, you can have two twins, so people who are genetically identical, have had the same womb environment, have had the same environment growing up, where one of the siblings develops a major psychiatric disorder, for example, schizophrenia, and the other doesn't. For the most part, if one twin has schizophrenia, the other twin has, I think the numbers, about an 80% risk rate of developing schizophrenia in their lifetime, but it's not 100%. So that goes to show you that even for a profound disorder like schizophrenia, there's still an interplay between genes and environment, and the same thing is true for autoimmune disorders.
And so then the same would be true to extrapolate that to depression.
Right, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. in my research, we talk so much about genes and biology and circuitry, but we also know that some of the things that are most likely to predict, you developing a psychiatric disorder in your lifetime are things like socioeconomic status, trauma incidents, lifestyle changes. So even though we are looking specifically at the biology, the epidemiology tells us that it's not just one or the other.
Yeah. A complex picture. I love epigenetics. You're talking about that epigenetics, the interplay of the environment on the genes, not even just the nurture part outside of that, but like literally gene changes from the environment. When I learned about that in a genetics class, junior year of college, I remember being so lit up by it. I thought genes were really deterministic, and I just thought the genetic model I was learning, I was just like, damn. And then I saw hope. I was like, whoa, we can actually influence the genes as well with the environment. I remember that really lighting me up.
Absolutely.
I love that answer about the autoimmune. It's just, I don't know is the best place to start. But my intuition is that that you likely have to have some genetic predisposition to develop an autoimmune disorder. That's just my off the cuff. I don't know, but just as a PA, done some research on stuff. My guess is there's some, but then a lot of the environmental factors, which I think is what you're pointing at are maybe even more important for that than for other disorders. I think of autoimmunity. I think about it's your exposures to something that first caused an immune response, and then it's everything around that time. What the setting was, what state you were in, what was going on in your body. Did you have another illness at the time? Whatever that might lead to autoimmunity issues that lead to it being a destructive process instead of a helpful protective process.
Totally. Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to belabor the point in terms of talking specifically just about like depression and its relation to the immune, but to go back to an earlier question about the direct links between autoimmune disorders and depression and the immune system. So there are small signaling molecules that are found in the immune system called cytokines. And there are some cytokines that are pro-inflammatory. There are cytokines that, when they're released by immune cells, will attract other cells to a site of injury or infection, for example. So cytokines are like the signaling molecule, the player. Well, cytokines can be used therapeutically to treat things like, I think hepatitis C, for example, and cancer as well. So you can use cytokines therapeutically, and what we have found is that, at least for some people, without any history of psychiatric disorder, with no history of depression, the therapeutic treatment with cytokines can lead to the development of major depressive disorder. So that goes to show you that, the immune system, just on its own, just manipulations to the immune system can lead to mood disorders or mood symptoms. And we know that also from animal models. We know that having a more primed immune system at baseline leads to stress susceptibility versus stress resilience in animal models.
As somebody who's not as academically trained as you are, and I'm sure some people listening to this will also not have that base, that background, what do you mean by immune system primed at baseline? Can you explain what that means? You've used it a few times, and I want to make sure that I understand it as well as anybody listening to this knows exactly what you're referring to.
Absolutely. So a more primed immune system at baseline, for example, is having higher blood concentration of certain pro-inflammatory cytokines, for example. So what that would mean is that, for example, an animal that has higher levels of I'll give the example of IL-6, interleukin-6, which is a pro-inflammatory cytokine that has been linked to stress susceptibility and mood disorders in both humans and animals. An animal that has higher levels of that cytokine at baseline is more ready to deal with a challenge in terms of infection or injury. However, having higher levels of IL-6, or another example is this cytokine tumor necrosis factor alpha called TNF-alpha, having those higher levels of blood levels of those two cytokines at baseline would predispose you to stress susceptibility.
So primed here means having higher levels of some of these immune modulators at baseline, I guess, prime to baseline. You're
Right.
saying at your regular state, some people, I guess because of genetic expression or their environment, you would be hard to tell, are just have a higher immune regulation, like
For
a
sure.
prime, more immune molecules going through the bloodstream at one given time, which would then make you primed, so make you more or less likely to have that response activate.
Like a more
But
robust
that would make you
immune
more
system.
or less. Which one is it?
It would make you more stress susceptible, but more resilient to things like infections. Like, so in talking about differences between men and women, we saw that even in the pandemic, where men across the board had higher rates of hospitalization and COVID deaths as compared to women at, controlling for things like socioeconomic status or hospitalization or lifestyle, So
That's fascinating. I love whenever you can see parallels between the physical world and spiritual or conceptual parts of our world. And one of the best ones there is just the meditation advice I got from David Nichtern, not too loose, not too tight.
Yeah.
So it's one of my foundational kind of mantras that goes through when I'm practicing, not too loose, not too tight. And I'm just hearing that in this thing with the immune system. Pros and cons to everything. You're spiked up on your immune, all right, maybe you're less likely to get the infection, but maybe you have more depression because this is all, there's a cost to everything. There's a cost and a benefit to everything.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I don't know. Ian's really, in PhD mode right here, and I love it, but I do kind of want to move us away, if that's all right, Ian, unless you got some more here.
I had a segue too, but if you want to take it, you can go ahead.
I'll try my segue. If my segue doesn't go, you just cut it and you put your segue. But I'm pretty happy with mine.
Give you a thumbs down if I hate it.
In the gladiator ring.
Right.
I'm pretty happy with mine. All right, now I'm really going to ham up this segue. So, Micah, you talked earlier about this. It wasn't satisfying to talk to your family members and other people around mental health, even though you're in the field, you're doing something for it, and not being able to help right then or give, that tangible advice. I think that's something I really respect about research science is that delayed gratification pretty much that comes with it. That you really do have to be willing to work without seeing the products of that work maybe ever. You have to accept that it also might not pan out to a new therapy or new paradigm, but you also know that you might really change the game. So delayed gratification, I think, just really really speaks to me about you because of your challenges. Micah, Ian, you wouldn't know this. Micah is someone who takes on challenges, and I mean some great challenges. And I want you to tell us about some of these for the betterment of yourself or improving yourself, and it's always an inspiration. I've never seen anyone take on more or more interesting challenges and see someone grow and develop through them. So can you tell us a little bit about why you delay gratification, why you do these challenges, and what some of your favorite ones have been?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Man, Caesar says he can live.
For now.
For now.
Yeah. Okay. So no, I definitely love a 30-day challenge. That's what Derek is mentioning. So, the reason I love to do a 30-day challenge is because for so many things where you want to make a change. I mean, even as simple as I know I should floss and I don't floss. I should floss. It's so hard to be like, okay, from now on, I'm going to do this thing for the rest of my life. But for me specifically, if I just tell myself, hey, 30 days, it's just a challenge, it's just like a benchmark you set for yourself, I can do it. I feel like I can do anything for 30 days. Whereas the idea of this is the rest of your life, this is who you are now, so difficult. But I have used that to make changes that, at least for now, have lasted the test of time. The first challenge that I did was to stop smoking cigarettes for 30 days. It was actually in me switching from graduate school to working in my current position. My employer didn't allow smoking on the premises, and I took it as let me try to quit smoking because I know it's not good for me. I've tried a bunch of times. it just feels like this is dovetailing. So I told everybody in my life, hey, I'm doing a 30-day challenge. I'm not going to smoke cigarettes. If you see me smoking a cigarette, you should roast me. You know what I mean? Like, you should slap it out of my hand. Like, you know what I mean? And even told everybody, like, if I do this, we're going to celebrate. We're going to celebrate. We're going to go to, at the time, Five Guys and get burgers. And so it was a thing. Like, you know what I mean? Because I made it a part of the community, because I had a reward at the end, because I had accountability built in, it made it so much easier. And whereas I had tried so many times to quit smoking before, this time it stuck. Like, I can't tell you, and maybe, I don't know if either of you have ever had to try to quit smoking cigarettes, but you'll probably identify with this. There are so many times where, like, I quit, where it's just like, yeah, I'm not going to smoke, but I didn't tell anybody. It was just like, yeah, I'm not going to smoke a cigarette, you know what I mean? And then 6 hours in, you're like, oh, man. I mean, nobody knows. Yeah, like, who knows? And, like, you would go to the store and get a cigarette. Yeah, just like, you know, I let myself down so many times, and I would just promise, like, you know what? This is the last pack. I'm going to throw it away after this. I'm going to be good. And I just found it wasn't helpful. It wasn't useful. So making it a challenge, telling people in your life, giving yourself even just like it's 30 days. Afterwards, if you feel like it didn't help things, it didn't change things, go crazy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Smoke 2 packs a day after this. But for the next 30 days, lost time, you know? Come on now. Your lungs are starting to get pink. Ew. You know what I mean? So, I found it useful. And once that happened for cigarettes, I started to use that as a tool for other things. So I used it to stop drinking. I used it to like, you know, quit eating meat. I'm a vegetarian now and have been since like 2017. Other challenges that didn't become permanent changes, that were just like, you know, one-offs, are the 30-day stretching challenge. Where, you know, it actually did help me. I started to stretch more and more and went from not being able to touch my toes to being able to touch my toes, so. Nice. The gallon of water a day challenge did not last. Yeah, I got it in my head. Like, you know what? I don't drink enough water. I'm like always dehydrated. I'm going to drink a gallon. I don't think I lasted a week with that one. Tough.
That's a lot of trips to the bathroom. That's
Come
a lot of time.
on. It is. And I wasn't even convinced it was healthy, you know? Yeah. So I let that go in the end.
Yeah, that brings me to this book that I know I've talked about on here before, but since I haven't talked to you before, Mike, I'm going to bring it up. There's a book called Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn. Incredible book. And it essentially goes into the mental brain structure of, like, what are we motivated by, and how do motivations impact our ability to do the things that we set out to do. And the cliff notes of it are essentially that people are intrinsically motivated. And if you try to motivate somebody extrinsically by punishments or rewards or, you know, ultimatums or you know, quid pro quos, whatever, you're not going to get lasting change because the person doesn't really want to do it.
Yeah,
so when you're talking about quitting smoking, I smoked for over a decade, and I had several people that I was in relationship with be like, man, you need to quit. Quitting's bad. I'm like, okay, sure, I'll quit. And maybe it lasts a few days, maybe a week or two, but when it really came down to it, when I was stressed or I was put in a circumstance where my addiction or my pattern was kind of activated, I would always go back to doing it because I didn't want to quit. They wanted me to quit, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it for you, but ultimately you have to do it for you if you really want to do that change. Absolutely. If you really want to change something about yourself. And so I love an opportunity to shout that book out. Anybody that hasn't read it, please go read it. It's so eye-opening. Not only like as a parent, I've got an 8-year-old, and so it's like, how am I going to motivate this small human to do things that are beneficial for him? And it's not going to be, you know, do it because I said so, or under the threat of fear or whatever, like my parents did. I have to educate this little human so that he understands why it's in his best interest to do these things. And similarly, I'm reparenting me of like, it's in your best interest to do this thing, not because other people say so. And so just a great opportunity to, you know, kind of shift your perspective and make sure you really want to do it. And that's where change comes from.
Absolutely. And like I resonate with the smoking thing so much because in the end, during that month, the reason that I was able to extend it beyond just the challenge is because I really turned on the ideas around smoking internally. Like, as a smoker, you have all these ideas of like, oh, I do it because, I'm stressed, or like I do it to, I'm kind of distracted. It's a way to be less distracted. And I just turned on those ideas and just like, okay, am I really more focused as a result of this? Like, is it actually producing the relaxation that I want? And just like, spend some time really like, investigating it. Like I remember sitting in my apartment alone, smoking a cigarette with my eyes closed and just being like, what does it actually feel like to smoke? Does it actually feel good? And being like, it feels all right. It feels raspy. It feels kind of like, it feels like I'm drying myself out. Yeah, I have a lot of stories about it, but those stories are just stories, and the stories don't really match the experience. So I resonate with it. It has to be intrinsic. It has to be inside,
Yeah, I love that questioning thing. If we could, man, I wanna make sure we clip that and have that be one of our like, of all the things that people could do to benefit themselves, like really going inside themselves and questioning their beliefs, their ideas, their patterns, their stories. Yeah. And really, like, is that really true, or is it comforting to say that that's true, right? Or 100%. Like, is the cigarette comforting, or is it really benefiting me? Is it something that's familiar, and so I like it because it's familiar, and so, but I can lean on this crutch of, there's this Instagram thing I read that said nicotine is really good for this, so boom, I'm doing something healthy actually. So you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different ways that we can convince ourselves or like support these beliefs that we have or these stories that we have. There's, especially in this day and age, the internet will tell you anything you want it to tell you. And so it can really, reinforce some of these stories.
100%.
But if you pull all of that away, just going into your own body and asking you, just like when the people go into muscle testing and pendulums or whatever, like, the truth more than the internet knows the truth.
Yeah.
You know it in you.
Yeah.
And so your truth anyway. And so I again, can't encourage that enough. I love that you brought that up, and I think that's a really wonderful way to find discernment. Like, is this true in me, or is this a crutch? Am I using this to justify this behavior that I know is bad, but I can use this to kind of scapegoat out of it?
Man, I'll tell you, cigarettes specifically are an interesting one because they are so addictive, and because it's a hit of dopamine every single time. And disentangling cigarettes actually was useful for me disentangling other things. Like, once I saw through cigarettes, it was like, oh, snap. A lot of things are just stories, aren't they? You know what I mean? Like, that's the reason the challenge thing was so useful, because it was like, oh, snap. Everything's kind of a story. Like, good stories and bad stories. But it's like, I could use that to disentangle these other stories.
Have you ever done these challenges with other people? Have you ever invited people into your 30-day challenges and made it a community thing?
I have, yeah. I've done that for the gallon a day challenge. I did that with my now wife, and actually a couple of friends as well. Vegan February was a thing that I've done as a challenge, and I've included other people, my wife, friends. And with that one, the understanding is like, it would be hard for me to like really make that a lasting change, but I think it's a useful or an interesting challenge. So it's like, okay, this is just a challenge. Yeah.
Cool. What's sorry, Derek. This is your friend. I love that.
He lives down the road. It's great.
Yeah, you guys can talk later, man. You'll see him next week. But no, so I mean, I love that. I love the 30-day challenge thing, especially bringing the community in. It's for, like you mentioned, accountability earlier, and that's why I was asking if you bring people in. I have experienced a mutual friend of Derek and I. His name's Sinjin. He actually makes clothing, made this shirt, makes most of the clothing that I own and wear. Awesome. Shout out Sinjin. His clothing brand is called Field Beyond for anyone who's interested. Yeah. But he got me into this workout group. And so every day you had to do a workout, and it was 100 push-ups every day, every morning. Eventually it like transformed. It evolved from there to like 100 push-ups or an equivalent. So like 50 push-ups, 50 squats. or, 50 pull-ups and 50, bench presses, whatever. But like 100 push-ups worth of effort every day. And if you don't, and you have to submit the video to the group. You're in a group, and you have to record yourself in time lapse doing your reps. And if you don't submit it by 9:30 in the morning, you have to do double for the day.
Whoa.
And if you don't do double, you owe $50 for the day.
That's that's
high accountability. And, it was incredible. I've never been as motivated as I was in that, because not only do I not want the negatives, I sure as hell don't want to do double, and I damn sure don't want to pay $50.
Totally.
So I'm for sure going to do it, but then it became like, man, somebody else already posted. I better get off my ass and do it, because I'm not going to, I don't want to be the one not doing it. It just, and other people will see it and they'll be like, oh, he's doing it. Good for him. I also there's so many different ways seeing somebody else do the thing they said they're going to do motivates you to do the thing for you, and brings that community in as well. So yeah, I love it, man. That's so cool. I'd love to do. What's your next challenge? What's your next 30-day challenge? What's on the
wow. That is such a good question. I've done a 2-week challenge recently where me and my wife used the Focus app to basically make our phones into dumb phones for 2 weeks. Notice we didn't do that for 30 days. We did that one for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And that was useful. I mean, it was it was good just to see how often I reach for the phone.
For sure.
Man, so many times, even the slightest negative feeling of oh, I gotta work on that project. Go for the phone. It's whoa, or even you reach for the phone and oh right, I'm doing the challenge. Cool. Put it down, and then a minute later, I'm kind of, oh wow, whoa, what was that? It's But in terms of a 30-day challenge in the future, I don't have one on the horizon.
Okay, well, the next one you're in, include me in it. I want
this guy too.
And we'll put it up on this too. We'll invite we'll put it out to our thing. Anybody that wants to be involved,
absolutely,
any opportunity to create community, I'm here for it, and to better myself. I'm all about it.
That's
so
right.
yeah,
you gotta have some ground rules. If you don't do it by 9, you will owe 50 specifically to me.
And entrepreneur over here trying to figure out how to do it. No, but yeah, I found so much help from the accountability community stuff. I really liked how you guys kept talking about stories. I think that's so good. I mean, that part that you mentioned and that you really liked. I mean, you were spoken like a true communication coach, the way you approach life, and so much curiosity, so much looking for the truth, looking for what's really there. And the stories, I think, is the best thing. We say it all the time when working with couples. It's what's the story here? Whenever there's a fight or an argument going on, what's the story that's behind this? And to bring that to these behaviors that we just take for granted, we just take as they are, this is what I do now. To be able to analyze that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of ability to tolerate discomfort. That's why it's called a challenge. And it's so helpful, and it's inspiring to others. I know it's always been an inspiration to me when you're doing these things. Most recently, the phone stuff. I've been talking to Micah as best I can. Hard to get a hold of. We got carrier pigeons going over to the place. We got smoke signals.
Morse code.
But we're finding ways anyway. And I think people are mimetic. We're mimes. There's memes going around. People are mimetic creatures, and we copy others. So Ian, when you're seeing, like you said, when you see someone already post one, it just implants that new story and that new path for your day. Wherever your story is, there's oh, here's a story of someone that's not a fictional character. This is a person I know that I've also shared and built a story with, that over here, and oh, he's writing a chapter right now. I get to write the next chapter too. And I think that getting out of our own heads is so helpful, because you're just sitting alone in the dark smoking a cigarette or whatever. You can just be stuck in the story, or you can look for something outside of that.
Totally.
And and I also just really thought that connection between what's familiar and what's comforting versus what's true, what's really going on. Am I smoking the cigarette because it's following these stories? It's whatever the story is telling me is why I should do it. Or is it because it's familiar and comforting something that I don't want to look at? And I had a mentor introduce the term to me one time, really stuck with me, perversely familiar. Talked about how things can be perversely familiar. And that just really ring true. What that means to me is, things that aren't good for you. That was a good example of smoking, where, you're probably not actually feeling better afterwards, or at least longer term, maybe not, in some time scale. It's not like it's actually, a good thing, but it's familiar, and it becomes this thing that, oh, they're onto us, boys. Everyone, watch out. Ho.
Can you hear that?
Shut down the podcast.
All right, we're good. Yeah, but things can get really familiar, and it's hard to figure out where the perversity lies. Where is it there? And that can really seed into relationships, and we accept the love we think we deserve, and why abusive patterns are so often carried on and on and on. I think there's so much explained by that. Exactly what you said, and that look for familiarity instead of truth.
Absolutely.
That's one thing I just really admire about you, Micah, is you keep staying curious and you keep looking for the truth, and you keep challenging yourself to see through new lenses.
100%. 100%. It's interesting. In talking about stories and talking about useful narratives or less than useful narratives, I thought about in that moment. One of the before cigarettes, before using that and disentangling that, I grew up very religious, and that was the story of my life as a child, as an adolescent, and through college I started to disentangle that. And I feel like, as much as I talk about cigarettes being kind of the catalyst for me looking at the stories of my life and seeing what's true and what's not, leaving the church was a thing that it was painful. It was hard. It separated me from community. It maybe launched me into other communities, but it was taking stories and having to unpack them and see about what was true for me. What was useful for me. Man, we're storytelling creatures. We are storytelling people, and it guides us for good and for worse.
Yeah, that's and if we're not recognizing that it's a story, and we're thinking that it is true, it's the reality, is the way things are, that can be a really dangerous path. And when we're talking about, when you were mentioning this familiarity and talking about how smoking that cigarette is you have this story about it being good for you or being this thing that is comforting, all the while it's really not. It's just a familiar thing that you use. That had me thinking about this, our mindsets, and how mindsets, we can also have a story. For instance, choosing to be a victim, right? We can look at a thing as, this is happening to me, I'm a victim, and that can be really comforting. Well, I haven't done anything wrong. These people are bad, and these things they're doing things to me, and I'm not responsible in any way. And that can be so comforting that eventually we stop taking responsibility for anything in our life, and we allow things to happen to us. And if you don't know that's what you're doing, you are really, kind of handcuffing yourself.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's tough too. I was talking to a friend about this earlier. We were talking about grit. We were talking about resilience in terms of careers and career moves and relationships as well. And it's hard to know, in terms of the stories about who I am and how this situation works for me. To know, hey, is this just a tough thing that I need to just grit through? Or is it a thing where I need to get out? And, that's a story as well. And it's a story that can trap you. Even the idea of, I'm a strong person who gets through things can trap you in a bad situation. Rather than you saying, I need to get out. This is not going anywhere. Yeah. It can keep, even that story of, I'm strong can keep you stuck. Can keep you in a place where you are being victimized.
Wow, yeah, competing stories. There's going to be multiple things can be true at once. There's this, paradox that leads to truth that you have to be able to sit with. I was just listening to meditation teachers talking about duality and non-duality and doing that kind of back and forth. And, it's always one of those listening to riddles or something, it kind of frees up the brain eventually after tying it up in some knots. And that's so interesting. Even the best stories, even really good qualities, can become perversely co-opted. I'm curious, Micah, how you see your story with that. You mentioned work, something one of your many challenges, I know, was around meditation. It's something that we bond over and keep each other accountable for too.
Yeah,
meditation,
absolutely.
buddy. You know,
Absolutely.
get an emoji for meditation here and there, and I get the emoji, and no $50 on the line. So we're low stakes accountability here, but it definitely helps. I'm curious what you see your goal with a meditation. What's the story of your life when it comes? Because you're a more serious student than even I am a lot of time, and I really have put some time into this. I really see you have like a hunger for enlightenment, and I really, it jazzes me up. So I'm really curious what you want that story to be.
That is an excellent question. So when I first got into meditation, so many kind of base level things were guiding me. Everything from, I was feeling pretty lost in my graduate school program and was feeling pretty overwhelmed by things. I was like, okay, this is a way out of that. You know what I mean? I was willing to, I was willing to do a lot of things and a lot of lifestyle changes to kind of feel better. And I was like, okay, meditation might be a way. People tell me it's good for you. I'll meditate. So getting out of anxiety, but also just being more suave in the world. I was like, oh, meditation is a way to just be more of a cool cat. I had always wanted to be a cool person. And I was like, oh yeah, the coolest thing you can do is be a meditator.
I've never heard anyone say that, by the way. I've talked about that a lot. Yeah. I've never heard it been I learned to meditate to pick up chicks. I just wanted to pick
100% was oh yeah, this will make me better in talking to women. 100% that was a thing that guided me to meditation.
Smoking cigarettes and meditating. Everybody
Come on now.
How you get kicked.
Come on now. Hey,
that kills me, dude.
No, 100%.
Universally accepted as panty droppers. Smoking cigarettes, meditating.
Come on now.
Everybody
right.
Come on, Derek.
Yes. Yeah, it's so interesting. So I got in thinking this will just help me to be more focused. It'll help me to be more relaxed. It'll help me in my relationships. And then I did a ton of monthly challenges, but I did a year-long meditation challenge where I was just as long as I meditate for 5 minutes a day, I've done it. Really small bar. And I did it. I probably missed about 3 weeks worth of days throughout the year, and this was 2023. But along the way, my eyes got open to whoa, the people who are really serious about this are talking about some profound changes. Not just being more focused, not just being more relaxed, but seeing through the stories that you tell about who or what you are. And I said,
stories.
Oh.
Yeah.
It kind of dovetailed where it's just oh, maybe the stories that I'm telling are more fundamental than just why I like to smoke cigarettes or that I am this age in this place. I was oh, maybe the stories about what constrains me as a person can be seen through. And that has guided me. It has been the North Star for me in terms of my path now. Just that idea of oh, if you push this and push this and push this, there's some things out there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Fuck around and find out, and I'm trying to find out. Wait, can we curse on this podcast? I don't know.
You can say whatever you want on this podcast.
It's exclusively children. No.
No. Yeah, this is 8-6, bro. What does your meditation process or practice look like now? So you did 2023. You did 5 minutes a day, and even missing 3 weeks out of 52, I think is pretty incredible. So now, not so much necessarily your frequency, but so many people don't understand what meditation is. Yeah. Right? So many people think it's something to do. I'm going to do meditation. I'm going to
for sure.
meditate. I'm going to actively meditate. And so for those who maybe don't have a intimate practice or intimate relationship with meditation, what do you do now?
Totally.
Describe it to people. How do you reach this meditative state?
Well, I'll go ahead and say once again, like I said with the autoimmune stuff, I am a novice. I recognize that I am. If there are stages, if there are levels, I'm still beginning. I'm still learning. So let me preface with that. The central guiding thing to my practice is coming again and coming again to this moment, you know. And I use a number of different strategies. The most often is, you know, plain Jane, breath awareness at the nostrils. But I've seen that, like, you can directly investigate being awake, and I've started to do that far more than I used to in the past. Like, we are all awake and aware in this moment, pre stories, pre thoughts, pre most things. And I have been trying to directly investigate what that means. You know, I have been slowly kind of disentangling all the different levels. You know, I am a married man who lives in Pittsburgh, who has a cat, and just being like, okay, like, you know, when I am quiet and waiting, what's there, you know? So my practice has been kind of guided by that, you know. I try to get up in the mornings before work and put in between 20 minutes and 30 minutes every day. Because before I had been practicing in the evening, and I felt like, I've said this to Derek before, and this isn't a thing that I've, you know, created or came up with, but that my energy in the evenings was like silver, whereas my energy in the mornings is gold. You know what I mean? Like, I'm far more likely to see it less as a thing to check off the list if I do it in the mornings, if I start my day with it. And yeah, I mean, I just sit with my mind. I sit with, much of my practice these days is moments, brief moments of being awake and aware, surrounded by, oh man, that project at work. Oh man, like, why did I say that? You know, and I'm still just like disentangling. But like, you know, my practice also looks like taking an afternoon constitutional after work, or after lunch at work, being quiet, you know. And even just checking in, you know, you listen to the radio as you're coming home, or you listen to your favorite song and just be like, am I actually listening to this song? Like, you know what I mean? Like, am I actually listening to the song? Like, I love this song. Let me just listen to it. You know what I mean? So a lot of my practices now are just trying to do that for basic stuff. I love to watch, like, you know, international soccer. Let me just watch it. You know what I mean? Put the phone down. Gosh, you know what I mean? Just watch the game. You love this. Why are you... Let that be afterwards, whatever that is, you know. But for now, just watch, just be.
I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's a beautiful answer. One thing that came up for me was I've been listening to, on Audible, Ram Dass has these like 200 episodes of like maybe 30 to 50 minute just with him talking, lectures, Q&A sessions, some with Tim Leary, some with who are just from when he first came back from the East to, you know, up to his death, right? Like, just incredible archive of different talks that he's had. And one of the things that he shared about was like this thing that we do of just naming things. And we'll name things, and now we don't need to be curious about it anymore. We already understand. Tree. That's a tree. And now we're moving on because we have a name for it. We don't need to investigate any further. We don't need to really see it or be present with it or explore it. And so similar, like you're saying, this song, oh, I know this song. It's one of my favorite songs. Like, yeah, I know it. I'm listening to that song. But are you really with that song? Are you really being present in that song and hearing the music behind it? What are the beats doing? And how's the person's voice going up and down? How do you feel when you hear that song? And what, like, doing that with every present moment and just being as hyper present with everything that you're doing is another, like, more of an active, like a walking meditation, if you will, right? But ultimately bringing you into presence. And so that just, I wanted to share that came up when you were sharing that, and I just love that, just the idea of that, just like, let me investigate being awake. I'm awake right now. What does that even mean? Like, not taking it for granted that, I'm living in this thing and it's a Tuesday and fucking whatever. Like, take so many things for granted about this awake that we are, this awareness or experience that we have. Very often we just, of course we're awake. Everybody's like living, you know. But there's so much to experience and so much to see if you slow down and take it one thing at a time.
Man, you know, I had mentioned this to Derek when we were talking the other day, but when you allow yourself to just kind of be with what you're experiencing, gosh, it's like is so intimate. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just it's like, wow, everything is so close. When you kind of just like let yourself be in a moment, and you know, I think moment to moment, a lot of what keeps me from being present is kind of like holding on to things, holding on to tension in my body, holding on to just ideas, and just like, oh, I gotta think about that, like, you know what I mean? But when you kind of just like relax and aren't just gripping these ideas or these feelings and sensations, everything is kind of like rushing in really quickly and really close. And I think that, like, you know, going back to the idea of truth, seeing the truth clearly, whether that be through a story or even just your sensate experience, is kind of scary, kind of like, it's tough. I think that's the reason we live in stories, because it's easier to live in stories than it is to live in the truth of things a lot of times.
That's right, man.
And also sometimes there isn't a clear line of what truth necessarily is, because it is subjective so many times, and your truth and my truth might not be the same, but they're both true, right? And so a story is something that you can cling on to, whereas truth sometimes is like sand falling through your fingers.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. You'll never really be able to get a handle on truth, or you know, as soon as you think you do, you need to watch out. Then you're in some trouble.
Right? No, 100%.
You know, it's like
that comes back to what you were saying earlier of like, don't hold on too tightly to something. Don't hold on too tightly to that truth either. Yeah.
Yeah. They say if you meet the Buddha on the path, kill him. It's just there's no way of capturing this perfection. But Micah, you really talked about this so well with meditation at first being like a path out of something. You're like, I'm stressed, I'm lost, or whatever. And then you guys both really got to how it's not a path out, it's a path in. But it almost always, I think most people come to it, what do I get out of this, you know?
Totally.
They come to it looking for a path out, and then find out it's actually this path in. You investigate your life and around, not interrogate, but you start to become curious. One of the main tenets of at least mindfulness meditation that we're talking about, that present moment awareness, you start to become curious, and then that becomes intimate. You know, everything starts to be a little closer. You don't have that barrier of stories, that shield that's always there.
Oh,
you don't
absolutely.
have that disconnect. And that's something we do here. It's one thing that I really like. One title for what Ian and I do that we've used before is, an intimacy and communication coach. And I got the communication part, but I was like, am I really qualified to talk about intimacy? You think about a lot of things with that. But whenever I really broke it down, and whenever we talked about it on this podcast before, whenever we broke down by intimacy, I'm thinking of the word close. I'm thinking about intimate is close. Reality can be very intimate, and that allowing something in, allowing that closeness is a skill that I wanted to, and I've done a lot of work to try to hone. And I never really saw how it was connected to meditation exactly until much more recently. But I think that's exactly right. Like, life is all around you. Like, this moment is right there on the surface, underneath the skin. It's intimate, and it's not always easy to be that intimate. It's not always easy.
No, it isn't. I mean, even at a base level of being in conversation with somebody and kind of, having those moments where you I think when you meditate, or you just like are starting to train yourself to recognize when you're mind wandering, recognizing when you're thinking of thoughts, or like paying attention to thoughts rather than the moment, and then being in conversation and kind of waking up to that moment and being like face to face with the person, looking them dead in the eye and being like, wow, this is a lot. That happens all the time now, where you're just like, whoa, this is a person. I'm like with this person in this moment, and it's like, it kind of feels, I've heard people describe their awakening experiences as like free fall, and I resonate with that idea. Like a lot of the stories we cling to are about the illusion of control and preventing that feeling of like, I don't control anything. Things are just ever-changing, right in my face, all the time.
Yeah. The bad news is that you're falling. The good news is that there's no ground.
Yeah.
I was just about to pull that quote out. Thanks, Derek. It's such a good one.
Yeah.
We have the same Instagram algorithm we must have, Derek.
Must be.
So I have a follow-up question from way back. So now that we've gotten much deeper into, we've talked about kind of your origin story, if you will, of how you got onto this path and these challenges and this self-improvement lifestyle and going deep into yourself and recognizing how, originally what you were doing in your post-grad schooling wasn't really satisfying and you weren't helping people the way that you wanted to help people. How are you helping people now? What things are you doing to satisfy that thing inside of you that wasn't being fulfilled? How are you doing that?
That's an excellent question.
Thank you.
I have kind of taken the pressure off myself about changing the world. Coming out of college being like, it's infectious disease, and then, it's neuroscience, and then straight out of graduate school, I started volunteering at my local community garden, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to change this neighborhood, get this garden together, and then I joined a peer-to-peer mental health organization. I was like, okay, that's how I'm going to do it. And I have kind of taken the pressure off of that and been like, you can do all of that by loving the people in your life. You know what I mean? The ways that I'm trying to satisfy that itch are about treating my wife Rosie with love, being a good son and brother, being a good friend, making sure the cat's okay, that kind of thing. I think, I had these big visions about I'm going to be what my mother calls a humdinger. The humdinger is somebody who is big and bold and passionate and just changes things and fills up the room. And I guess I had all these ideas about it was out there and away from my life now, and how can I do that? Whereas now I'm just far more just how can I just make sure that the small corner of the world and the universe that I'm a part of is filled with love, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah, just trying to be real plain Jane with things, I mentioned that I grew up very religious, and the nugget that I took away from that, if I've taken away anything, is that compassion is supreme. And if you are treating people and yourself with love, then you're doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really hard to know how to serve in the world. I think service is a really important thing. I think Ram Dass's organization, the foundation that honors him, is called Love, Serve, Remember. The Love, Serve, Remember Foundation. I think about that a lot. There's a lot of wisdom in those three words. And service, I've run the trap of trying to spread myself too far and trying to serve in the way that I had a story that was the right way to serve, and really neglecting starting close in. And first, making sure that I'm serving my household and the people in it and my family and whatever circles, intuitively fall in line from there. So, I respect that, and I think it's a hard world where we live in now, where we can be so connected to things anywhere. You can be basically, trying to take on Ukraine, Russia, and giving aid there and using your time, resources to that cause. You can be trying with the newest disaster in another country, or the power outages here, or the famine here, or, which corner of your city. There's issues in every corner of your city. Which corner of your neighborhood? Where to start can, I think, be really paralyzing. So for me, I think that's it's helpful to take that pressure off and to find where, again, if there's anything to truth, if there's anything at least to personal truth, if we can slow down and investigate it, maybe we find the not right path. There's no right path, there's no wrong path, but maybe the most skillful path available to us, or one of the most skillful paths, instead of getting strung out by these stories to these different areas.
Absolutely. No, totally.
Yeah, so to tie in what we talked about earlier, we mentioned very briefly the idea of non-duality. And if we can bring that back in for a second, for Micah to pour love and serve his partner or his friend or his neighbor, there is no separation. Your neighbor is you. To love him is to love you. To support them and serve them is to serve yourself. And it's in the same way, to serve that neighbor is the same thing as serving those people in other countries that need whatever. We're all connected. There is no difference. The idea of separation is an illusion, I believe. And for you to love that person, we don't understand, and nor will we ever, could we possibly fathom the butterfly effect of you loving your neighbor and serving him by maybe helping him with his lawn. Maybe his lawnmower is broken, so you help him out and you mow his lawn. You don't know what doing that, how that's going to serve him, how that's going to help him have the capacity to do something else for someone else, which will open the door for this, which will open the door for this. So like, I love that we're talking about let's simplify it. Let's bring it in to your what can you affect? Who can you touch in real time? Who do you have access to? Serve them, and then trust that will continue on. I love that idea of, because like Derek, you're saying, there's so much, especially with media. We're bombarded with all of these terrible things happening all over the place, and it's tragic, it's terrible, and it's awful. A lot of the horrible things that we're being shown and being told are happening all over. But the reality is, you as one person have finite energy, and you can only do so much. And so getting worked up about all the things you can't do is not going to help you or anyone. Instead of focusing on the things that you can do, the things you can control, which is your own peace, finding your own ground and your own center, and from there pouring love into those that you can touch and you can reach.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it even starts with yourself in terms of like, you had mentioned, Derek, being spread thin across things, pouring energy back into yourself so that you do have the capacity to be kind to people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we meditate so that we can serve others. We work on ourselves so we can serve others. We nourish ourselves so we can nourish others. Not always easy to do. I think I'm perversely familiar with some, self-neglect for the service of others. But that's the story, and that's the story that I'm working to change. Yeah,
absolutely.
Derek, do you have any other? That was my final main question that I wanted to ask, was coming back to that, helping people and coming back to that thread. Do you have any other?
Mike and I talked for 3 hours a day. I got plenty of questions still. But Ian, do you have a harder out? Do you need to get going soon?
I don't have a hard out today. We can go, really whatever the flow of the conversation takes us to. But I also feel like we've had a beautiful conversation, so I don't feel like we need to push and force anything more. But I'm definitely open if there's something that you really want to bring up right now. No,
I want to force it. No, I think I'll just...
It's the opposite of what we've been talking about on this podcast, but all
cling.
No, that was the clinging. No, and that's the thing. Once I look at it, we actually already talked about it. I really wanted to... We just haven't even said the words. I wanted to talk to Micah and you, Ian, both of you, about this, the path of the householder. In meditation, there's renunciates, and you can, take the robes and you can go and just meditate. And wow, what a life thing. Okay, and we learn a lot from those, but it's a very different path to hold a house, to be in the world and try to not just be of it, to be of something else. Very different path. And because a lot of the teachings come from renunciants, because a lot of the teachings and things we get come from people, even if not a total renunciate, but people like Ram Dass, who really went a different way, really steeped themselves very deeply, did, shed names and titles and things like that. Very, very, it's something I'm very interested in, is how to live this world and how to live a mindful meditative path as a household, or as a person in the world, and still, trying to maintain your connections and community. And I think, when I started thinking about, we already got to a lot of that. We're talking about it this whole time, and I learned a lot about it, about, starting small, starting close in, about what we do with ourselves, and about, keeping service in mind, but being able to drop the stories and tune into what's really there first and then act from there.
Yeah.
I think that's probably as good of an answer. I'm looking for an answer. There's some part of me that's seeking, wanting, an answer. That's probably as good of an answer to anything I'm going to get. It's never easy. It's never easy to just, point to the right thing.
One thing I will say, to that point, is that I think everybody is kind of like, on the path, whether they know it or not. Like, some of us are aware of tools that can maybe speed up the process to seeing things directly. But we're all on this path, and it feels as if, like, even if you are, maybe even especially if you are in a household, you need this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've kind of let go of a lot of the, what my friend Erastus calls gaining ideas about meditation. Like, letting go of the idea that it's good for something. Mm-hmm. But I think that in order to be effective, you kind of got to be here for it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, in really basic ways. Not even really talking about the goals of the path, but just like the moment to moment of it. Being like a good friend, brother, parent means being here for it. And like, that's true for everybody, whether or not they have the tool or technology of meditation, So I think that it's necessary whether or not you devote your whole life to it. You got to be here for it,
I think that also too, to circle back to your own words earlier, you also have to be there for yourself.
Yeah.
Before you can be there for someone else. Like, there's so many people I know giving from an empty cup.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not caring for themselves. They're people pleasers. Regardless of the circumstance, it's all about everybody, and then whatever's left over, those scraps, well, that's what's going to be for me, and that's not a sustainable model. And so being present with you and your needs so that you can give fully and not from a place of, as we would call it, outside of the wheel of consent. Shout out to Eddie Martin. But, being truly able to give full consent, giving with a full heart, really able to say, yes, I want to do this because I want to do this for you, because I want to, not because I feel like I have to, or because I want something from you later, or whatever reasons that we find to give or to be of service. Do it because you really want to serve.
Wow, yeah.
That's right. Stories.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And it's like that's one thing that really stuck with me from the last time we talked to Micah. You talked about dropping that gainfulness, coming into meditation, like Erastus talked about.
Yeah.
Not with what am I going to get from this? What am I going to get from this?
Right.
You do have to drop that, and it's flipping that expression on its head. Instead of like no pain, no gain, you're saying, hey, if you do no gain, you're not no pain. Like the pain comes from you trying to gain so much.
100%.
Let it go.
100%.
Give yourself permission.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I still hope it makes me suave. We'll see.
If I learned anything, the one part we're clipping is that meditation makes you cool and great at picking up women.
Now.
Okay.
Right. Come on
clipping
now.
That's going everywhere on
Totally.
the socials. No, that's wonderful. No, that seems like a good place to wrap for me, especially because a crazy storm's coming. I don't know if it hit you already.
It's coming for me. The trees they're moving. The sky's getting overcast. I think you can see the light has changed a little bit in the room.
I thought your air conditioner went back on, Derek. I can hear voice in the background. I'm like, damn, he just turned it down. He didn't have to turn it off.
Turn it back up.
He's sweating in that sweater. So, Micah, thanks so much for being here, man. I really enjoyed this conveation. It was a pleasure to meet you. I hope one day to meet you in person.
Absolutely.
Share some energy, maybe break some bread, but truly, loved the conversation. Hope to have you on again soon.
Absolutely. No, this has been excellent all around. Grateful to you both for letting me be here.
This has been the Do You Feel Heard podcast. If you're interested in resources that will help you move through conflict, you can go to doyoufeelheard.com, where we have tools for individuals and couples.